Hi everyone, how have you been? How is it going? How is life? How is the journey you're in? How are those dreams coming on? How are those resolutions coming on? Uh, I am well in the Lord. God has kept me. He has been my Ebenezer, and I'm grateful to Him. I I thank God for every season, for every phase, for every moment, for every minute, because He teaches us so many things, especially in times when we least expect. We don't even feel like we deserve to even hear from God. And just to encourage you, yesterday I was listening to a sermon, and the the name of that pastor, I can't remember, but I'll make sure that as I post the video, I put his name there so that all credit goes to him who was used by God. And he was talking about those times when you feel like God is not there. That moment when you feel like you can't even hear God is not there. And he said something that I've never heard before. He said that the first thing you do is actually embrace that feeling. The feeling that God is not there, that you're not close to God, that you cannot feel Him near. That the first thing we need to do is embrace that feeling. And in such a it was such an interesting revelation for me, because what he said was that, what is it that makes us think God is near on these other days, and then on one particular day we feel God is not near? It is an opportunity for us to actually stop and humble ourselves before God and allow Him to remind us that He is not there. He is not an off and on God based on what we feel. But as we humble ourselves, He lifts us up. He does not come and go like we feel. But as we humble ourselves, He lifts us up. And one of the things that I got from that sermon was that moment that makes us feel that God is not here is actually a very, very, very good opportunity for self-evaluation. And not we evaluating ourselves. It's an amazing opportunity for God to evaluate us and just tell us, when David says, search me, it's a great opportunity for God to search us, to allow God to search us so that we can be able to walk in the way God has called us to walk. It was quite something. I'll put the pastor's name so that you go look for that video. And that message actually inspired me because of, for one thing, when I was looking for that sermon, I was also wondering, I don't feel God. Is He there? No, we thank God. A relationship with God is not based on what we feel, but based on what we believe. Though many times I allow my situations to make me think that there's no faith anymore, there's no hope anymore. But that made me go looking for that someone quite interesting. I've never heard of the pastor before, but now I'm on a roller coaster listening into his sermons and just wow, it's very interesting. Just allowing myself to stop. In fact, one of the things that I actually did this morning was go out with our baby without my phone. Very interesting, does it to realize how so many things are holding us captive. Like, I'm thinking, when I first thought of that, I was like, oh, what if someone looks for me? And I've done it twice and not even a missed call. I need to realize how much we are tired by things of this world, and unknowingly they can actually take away so much that God intends to do in us, and deny us opportunities to listen in as we worry. That also is part of what I learned from the same pastor. You go listening. I think it's good to get to those points where we feel low, because they help us actually ask God to speak to us genuinely. We being at that point where there's nothing that we can there's nothing that we there's no strength, there's no, like when you feel you're at a low point, if you allow God, it's a very beautiful place for him to now speak to us in his own divine ways. So that also encouraged me to just go back a few chapters to the story of Abraham. Is it even a few chapters? I'm sorry, my nose is itchy. I just my usual devotion, I'm usually a bit ahead of the videos I post. So I decided to just go back to just look and see whether there was a point when Abraham was low. Abraham had his moments, but there's this particular moment that I think resonated with what I heard from the pastor that I was listening to. I'm so sorry because I didn't really catch the name. I was so focused on listening in. I didn't even master the name, but I'll put it here. And it's from Genesis chapter 23. Just a few verses from verse 1 to 4. This was the death of Sarah, and it must have been a very, very, very tough time for Abraham, because he had journeyed with Sarah. He had gone, like they had a story of their lives, and they had gotten the promise of Isaac. They had had their moments of going in and passing each other as brother and sister. They had had their moments of Hagar. They had journeyed together, This was Abraham losing his friend. And so when Abraham died, when Sarah died, it was, it's interesting how, those points when we are low, those points when we are going through hard times, those points that, just life, just throws a blow on our faces. Those times when we were expecting blue and we received something contrary to what we're expecting. It's interesting how, because of the level of emotional involvement in these things, how we can easily see from the situations we're in, and really need God at that point to just remind us, God, this is where I am at, and this is what I'm going through, and I really want you to remind me. And those times could be so tough that we don't even go to ask God to remind us. We just stay in our situations. But God is amazing. God is loving, and He knows what we need to hear. He knows what we need to have in the seasons that we are going through. And so let's just encourage each other through the book of Abraham. What did I say? Through the book of Genesis. I'm so sorry. Okay, from Genesis. Genesis chapter 23. Verse 1 says, Sarah lived to be 127 years old, full of life. Verse 2 says, she died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Verse 3, then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. He said, verse 4 is the verse that I think was an expression of Abraham's low point and what he felt concerning himself at that particular time when he had lost someone he dearly loved. In verse 4, he says, I am a foreigner and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so that I can bury my dead. Wow. You know, we would think, I would think of a stranger as someone who, not in the sense of, I would think of a stranger in the sense of time, you know, like maybe if you've stayed in a place for some time, you were no longer a stranger, though I know in those days a stranger was anyone who did not belong to that tribe. And a foreigner, you know, if you go back just a few verses, verse 34 of chapter 21, the Bible actually says, and Abraham stayed in the land of Philistines for a long time. This is someone who had settled among the people and, you know, just settled there, received the blessings of the Lord from there, was thriving there. So this is someone who we would have maybe thought of as an established person in a place. But at this point, at this one particular point, Abraham was at a very low point, having lost a dear one. And when he was looking now for a place to bury, he had to ask the Hittites to sell him land. And he refers to himself as a foreigner and a stranger. And I was looking back to see where else this reference had come from. You know, a few chapters behind. Actually, it was in verse 21 again. In verse 21, Abimelech was the king of Gerar. Abimelech had actually noticed that Abraham was really, really prospering. So he had gone to Abraham with Phicol, the commander of his forces. So this is more like a president and the head of the army going in to make peace with someone. It's not a small deal. This is quite a big deal. They had actually noticed that Abraham was really prospering in a way that was not usual. So they wanted to go in and make a treaty with Abraham. Interesting. And you know, at that point, in verse 23, at the very end, Abimelech actually called Abraham a foreigner. He says, show to me in the country where you now reside as a foreigner the same kindness that I have shown you. That was the time that that reference of being a foreigner was actually mentioned in the Bible. And when Abraham was at his lowest moment, I think that word became so real for him. He was a foreigner and he was a stranger. And I don't know whether it was mainly because of, you know, referring himself as giving himself an identity compared to the Hittites, or giving himself that identity based on the situation that he was going through. But he referred to himself as a foreigner and as a stranger. And we have those moments when the reference we put on ourselves are heavy. Maybe for Abraham, it was based on his citizenship in that place. Maybe it was based on having gone through a terrible loss of his wife. For us, it could be circumstances, job losses, losing loved ones. It could be prayers that we desperately hoping they will be answered, but we are starting to give up. It could be so much. It could be relationships that are going bad. It could be, that workplace. It could be that home environment. It could be that church environment. It could be so much. There's so many things that come our way that make us look at ourselves in line with what in line with the circumstances that we are going through. Um, it's interesting that God knows where we are, and God knows what we need to hear, and God knows that there are circumstances we go through that we actually need someone else to speak, and that we may hear and see ourselves contrary to what our situations at the very present moment are making us feel. You know, Abraham he was in a foreign land, because even the president, um, in this case, I'd consider Abimelech as the president of that country. He had come to make treaty with him. At that point, when Abraham felt like he was a stranger, can you imagine? God uses the people of that land. They're called the Hittites. It's it's very beautiful. God, in verse 5, God used the Hittites, and guess what they said? The Hittites replied to Abraham, "Sir, sir," the same person who called himself a stranger and a foreigner. The owners of the land called him sir. "Listen to us. You are a mighty prince among us." Can you imagine? I think these words kind of make me very emotional, in the sense that how many times we look at ourselves in line with the situations and circumstances we're going through, and God looks at us and he sees a sir, a prince, a mom, a madam, a princess, a king, a queen. And you can imagine if in those situations, in those tough situations, if we could surround ourselves with people who can speak the right things over our lives, we could surround ourselves with knowledge that actually speaks positively and speaks God's truths concerning us. Because truly, kings don't go to make pacts with local people, with ordinary people. Abimelech went to make a treaty, and he went with his commander-in-chief. He went to make a treaty with Abraham. He was no ordinary person, but his situations, his state at that moment made him feel like a foreigner, like a stranger, like he did not belong, everything else rather than what God saw at that particular point. And just to continue how the Hittites referred to Abraham, in verse 6, "Sir, listen to us. You're a mighty prince among us. Bury you dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you his tomb for burying you dead." How amazing can this God be? How caring, how Rima can his words be? How he uses people we least expect, the people who would actually make us feel like we're truly strangers and we're truly foreigners, and we don't belong. We don't belong to that class, we don't belong to that, whatever it is. You know, God uses these same people who we would have maybe thought would be the ones to sideline us, and he uses them, and they tell Abraham what they know he is: a prince, sir. It must have been very encouraging for Abraham. I'm not told what he felt when he was called that, but it must have been very encouraging. And my prayer for all of us is that today God will bring the right people to speak his Rhema word in our lives. And not just that today we will allow God to make us the right people, the right people who will go and speak that Rhema word in the lives of others. You know, it's very easy to think that what do the Hittites know? They were not Israelites. They were not. God did not say all these things He said concerning them. Concerning them the same way He spoke concerning Abraham. He didn't say any of those things. He blessed Abraham. He didn't say He was blessing the Hittites. But guess what? You know, God used the Hittites to speak mightily over Abraham at that particular point. He used them to even comfort him, because at that particular time he was looking for a place to even bury a loved one. And they tell him, you know what, get the best of the best. And Abraham had already identified a place that he wanted, and he got it. If you go on reading the rest of the verses, my prayer is that we don't sit and think, so what do I have to offer? Indeed, we don't have anything to offer. We don't. And it's very important that we acknowledge that we don't have anything to offer. I don't have anything to offer you. These are words that I'm speaking. I'm just a vessel. And I am not speaking because I'm offering you anything. You're hearing because God is offering you something. And you, in the same way, God is not going to make you speak and you go speaking new things. God is going to use you. You're not going to speak because you have the right words to say, or when you speak, miracles will happen. No, and I think it's good to acknowledge that, so that when God uses us, we don't think, I told you, like I told you, so when I speak, miracles happen. I think it's good to just acknowledge that purity. When I speak, I hope that people are blessed, but people will not be blessed because I spoke. No, it's because God uses us in our various capacities, the way He has wired us, as we allow Him to. And when we see people blessed through the things that we see, it's important to remember that, wow, God, you can actually do that. Wow, I want to continue walking with you, so that you may use others to minister to me, to speak to me, and that you may use me to speak to others, so that we continually build a fellowship, an online fellowship, an offline fellowship of people who have hope. Not because we are in a club or something, like a club of people who speak nice things, no, but because we have set our eyes on God, who is able to give us hope, is able to comfort us, is able to encourage us. And I think also to acknowledge that situations will always be there. Always be there. Always. In this life, it's an imperfect world. Those situations will always be there. So we will always need, at one point in time, to be encouraged and to also encourage others. So that when those times come, we are able to stand stronger. We're able to even hold each other and hold others, even in our darkest times, in our low times, and find joy, to be able to do what God actually says, rejoice in the Lord always. And I think especially when we are going through tough times, if we are rejoicing, if we are at peace, it's a great opportunity for God to show Himself as the Lord that is able to take us peacefully through storms, take us peacefully through whatever situations we are going through, and bring us out victorious and refined in Him. May God bless you so much. May God encourage you. May God lift you up. And may God take you through whatever season you're going through and use you. And when He wants to use you and you feel like you don't want to be used because you are inadequate, that is the right feeling. In fact, that is where we should be at all the time. Only that, in acknowledging that we are inadequate, then we tell God, whatever you will do, I know it will not be anything that I have done. There is no point that we are adequate. Even when we feel like, wow, today I feel like, I'm charged with something. It has never been us. It has never been us. It has always been God. So God bless you so much, and enjoy your time and your evening, depending on your time zones, for the glory of God. And be encouraged. Today, decide to go and encourage someone else and be a blessing to many, many more people. In Jesus' name. And if you've not subscribed, if you've not left your comments, your views, and your revelations, it would be good to hear from you. It would be amazing to see many people subscribe and let us grow together for God's glory. Bye bye.